Good evening, colleagues. Thank you for joining the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you for members and officers in the audience this evening, and thank you for members and officers and members of the public who have tuned into this meeting. You're all very welcome. If I can say a particular welcome to the normal chairman of this committee, Councillor Howarth, who unfortunately hasn't been well. David, we wish you a speedy recovery so that you can return and chair this meeting. Unfortunately, this evening it's fallen into my hands to actually chair the meeting, but I'll do my best to continue your good work. So let's hope we have a positive meeting this evening. Please could members indicate to speak in the usual manner, and for members who are dialing in from home, if you use the raise your hand feature as usual. There's no fire drills planned for this evening. If the alarm goes, please leave by the nearest exit and gather in the grassed area, and please make sure that any mobile phones are switched to silence. Charlotte, do we have any apologies for absence this evening? I understand that there's quite a list. So over to you, please.
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor David Howarth, Councillor Donoghue, Councillor Colin Coulton, who is being substituted by Councillor Jackie Mort, Councillor Will Adams, Councillor Jackie Alty and Councillor Matthew Trafford.
Okay, thank you for that, Charlotte. We've just got the one substitute, unfortunately, but fortunately in the other way, that it's Councillor Mort. So you're very welcome, Jackie. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Members are reminded of the need to declare interest as set out and in accordance with the Code of Conduct. Are there any matters that anyone wishes to raise? Thank you. Minutes of the meeting which took place on the 13th of July, it seems quite a while ago now, are set out in the pack. Are there any matters that any colleagues wish to raise? Members of the committee first. Members in the audience. No, are we happy to approve those minutes as an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the minutes of the meeting of Scrutiny, Budget and Performance Panel, which took place on the 13th of September. Any matters regarding those that anyone wishes to raise? Be happy to accept those. Thank you. Okay, item 5, matters arising from previous Scrutiny Committee meetings, which are set out on pages 17 to 20. Okay, colleagues wish to raise any points regarding these? Councillor Walton, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. It's just a comment really on page 17 about there are 16 recommendations and there are only 3 of the 16 recommendations have been completed since July 2019. I think that is quite unacceptable, and if there is a reason why they haven't been completed or even implemented or in progress, I think we need a little bit more information than is actually provided in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. Councillor Failbaugh.
On page 20, can we have an update on the air quality, the new mobile air quality equipment and any other major climate change measures that the council has implemented?
Thank you. Can that be arranged? Thank you, Darren. If I can raise some matters as well, please. So the second item on this list on page 17, we asked 2 years and 3 months ago for an update on the master plans. That's master plans in relation to Leyland, Pemberton and Bamber Bridge. That action has still not been completed. Do we have any update this evening, Darren?
Chair, I know that our Director of Planning is working on this, and I will speak to him tomorrow and we will circulate an update outside the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Thank you. Could you send email Councillor Evans as well, and to ask him to chase up the officers accordingly? That would be helpful. On these actions, we've also got some visits that we asked for as members of the Scrutiny Committee. So that's visits to the extra care facility at Chorley, visits to Word and All, etc. They haven't taken place due to COVID. Obviously, COVID measures have relaxed significantly since then. So I'm just wondering when we are likely to be invited to carry out these visits. So if that could be followed up as well, please, that would be helpful.
Yes, Chair, we will do that now. It's safe to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And page 19, minutes 7.3 from the 13th of July. We're encouraging the police to engage with elected members. And the comment that's come back is a meeting has been held with the leader and deputy as part of their feedback model. Just wondering if we could expand on what that actually means, please. Yeah, Mr. O, yes, feel free.
So, committee are probably aware that there have been some significant changes in senior staff at the police. So, with a new chief constable starting, a new deputy about to start, and some appointments to senior posts. The chief constable has acted very quickly in terms of his desire to put in infrastructure and management arrangements different to those that were previously being used by the police. Where previously they had a thematic model, they are moving back to a geographical model. And they're in the process now of putting all the infrastructure and hierarchy into those posts. So I think and I met with the chief super on Friday, just for an update to see where we're at. So they're still in the process of putting all the people in post. And as you know, one of the issues has been the use of the police station. So the police station is about to reopen, and that's part of the new model that he wants to deliver, which is more about policing the communities. What we haven't seen yet is the full policing plan. Now, the Police and Crime Commissioner is about to launch his plan too. And I think over the coming 2 to 3 months, what we'll be able to do is to determine who we should have in this place. All the positions will be in place, or all the senior police officers. And then we'll get into a discussion then about local policing. So I think my message is it's work in progress, and not all the infrastructure is in place yet.
Thank you, that's helpful. Councillor Thirlwell.
As a guy, as I can call myself, as I was born and bred there, would you know if Bamber Bridge Police Station will be reopening as well?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any more questions? Otherwise, thanks to the Chief Executive for stepping in there. Okay, any other matters arising from previous Scrutiny Committee meetings, colleagues? No. Okay, so if we can move on to item 6 then, which is a peer challenge 2021. And if I can invite the leader of the council, Councillor Paul Foster, and the Chief Executive, Mr. O. Okay, thank you. You're both very welcome. Thank you for coming. Are there a few initial words that you'd like to say?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and hi to the committee. If I may, just give a little bit of background, Chair, as is presented in the report, but I don't intend to speak for long at all. But the peer challenge took place between the 30th of June and 2nd of July of this year. Although originally intended to be in attendance here in the Civic Centre, restrictions linked to the pandemic prompted a decision to complete the process virtually, with the peers using video conferencing to undertake their inquiries. First time that's ever happened, by the way. We're the first council to do this. The peer challenge team was made up of 5 senior officers and members from other authorities who were selected on the basis of their relevant experience and expertise. Prior to the challenge, the peer team were provided with a range of documents and information, including a position statement which set out the scene for the challenge. Whilst on site with us, the team spoke to more than 65 people, including a range of council staff, councillors, external partners and stakeholders through over 34 meetings and focus groups, totalling 144 hours of contact time. The findings, Chair. So on the final day, the team presented their initial findings and subsequently submitted them to the Council as a final report. And that is Appendix A of the papers in front of you tonight. In summary, Chair, the peer team recognised the promising nature of the work to date and the outcomes in relation to governance that have been achieved while delivering effective services throughout the pandemic and continuing to change the ways of working, including the implementation of shared services. Clearly, there is more to do, and the good work to date must be embedded. Plans and strategies also need to be developed to clearly set out the way forward for the Council. Finally, and I think the important areas that the Council are now looking at is the 8 recommendations that they put forward for continued improvement. A couple of quick wins and longer term objectives. So number 1 was embed a culture of good governance. Number 2, provide full clarity on the ambition and plans for shared services. 3 was the programme plan for future work and political priorities. 4 was the medium-term financial strategy. 5 was around the assurance on capital programme delivery. 6, the organisational development and management practice. 7, the community hubs. And finally, the political engagement in a balanced authority. And all those recommendations, Chair, are in Appendix 1. And bear with me because I'm trying to be paperless. And what we've got in there as well as the description of the action, Chair, we've also provided what our actions will be that we believe we're required to deliver on those recommendations. And we've also included the timescales for the delivery of those actions. Unless, Vicky, you have anything to add, we're open to any questions you may have, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, which is helpful, and we do welcome the report and look forward to the Council moving forward together. We do have a number of questions, particularly around the recommendations, so we'll take those in turn if that's okay with yourselves. So I'll kick off as Chairman's prerogative. So the word embed is used a great deal throughout the report. What do you think is meant by the word embed, and how will we know when we've actually achieved this?
For me, it's simple, Chair, with any changes, particularly around cultural changes as well, to make sure every area of the authority is acting in the same new way. So I would like to see, that's what I mean by embed, is there's a change, it's been implemented, let's make sure the entire authority is working together in that same way, Chair.
Any supplementaries from anyone? No. If I can ask Councillor Walton to ask the next question then, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Councillor Foster. Good evening, Vicky. My question again, it's on page 47, it's concerning the action plan. Can you explain what the success measures associated with the action plan will be, and how will we measure success, and will smart targets be used for this purpose?
Karen, can you just explain which what we're referring to?
Well, it's about the action plan in general. Right. You know, with the actions, how will we see that they will be monitored and success measured?
So just before Vicky comes in, clearly it's going to Cabinet tomorrow, and Cabinet will be looking to get an update report. I would suggest in the next quarter as well. I would also suggest that on the corporate governance monitoring reports and performance reports, I'd like to see an update there as well on the progress that we're making. I'd also suggest, Cameron and Chair, that the Scrutiny Committee would be wanting to see updates as well. Yeah. Vicky?
Yes, thank you. So internally, as you can see from the action plan, the senior management team own the actions that are within this plan. So at regular intervals, probably quarterly, if not more frequently, we'd be going through the programme and looking at each of the actions to make sure that they've been delivered. So from this action plan, we'll be developing a more detailed programme with clear measures and targets at each point and milestones as well, so that we can measure against them as a senior management team. Yeah.
I look forward to it coming back to scrutiny, so that we can keep, and be aware of what what's happening. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a need for them to be smart moving forward. And I think that's what we all need to see. Councillor Thirlborn, have you got supplementary to that, please?
Sorry, Chair, I've got a supplementary. Can we confirm that phases 1 and 2 have been delivered? And that is question 2 on page 47, the last bullet point in the second column.
So I think we're almost there with the full delivery of phases 1 and 2 of the shared services. I think there's still more work to be done, and we're going through the final phases of looking at the restructuring plans, reorganisation of the customer services. I think it is, Vicky, isn't it? But we're almost there. But what's critical, I think, where we're moving forward with where the peers were, is that we've got to have absolute clarity now on what the next stages might look like. But I like to see us finish phases as you do. Let's finish what we've already started, analyse what we've already started in detail, and then develop the plan for moving forward. And I can confirm to the committee that we are having some informal discussions already with our partners at Chorley, and there's certainly a paper going to be taken to the Shared Services Joint Committee fairly quickly with a view to looking how we do move forward, and this will clearly be subject to your scrutiny as well.
Thank you.
Do we assess staff feedback on shared services, and how is that done?
So as part of our regular monitoring to the Joint Committee, we include feedback on staff satisfaction through a regular survey that's undertaken. So we did one as part of our monitoring for the last quarter, and we'll soon be undertaking one ready for the monitoring that will go to the Joint Committee in November. And that gathers feedback from staff, and then it's presented in terms of levels of kind of satisfaction and general feedback.
Thank you. Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question has already been answered. You preempted it about whether scrutiny is going to be involved in monitoring. Thank you.
Yeah, Kathy, absolutely. Sorry, the water's gone down the wrong way. It absolutely is going to be involved. Scrutiny is an important cog in making shared services work. And so, as you know, scrutiny should be scrutinised in every function of the council. Shared services is new, and clearly we'll be working with you as a team to make sure we bring forward best improvements, best practice.
Thanks, that's helpful. You happy with that, Councillor? Yes. Okay, thank you. Next, could I bring Councillor Mowatt in, please? I think he's already done it. Sorry. Yeah, my mistake. Councillor Sharples, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening. Page 47, recommendation 1. Reference is made to considering further governance areas that may not be in the scope of the council's existing action plan. What might these be?
I don't know, Colin, if I'm being honest with you, but I know the monitoring officer is looking closely at all areas of governance and discussing that with both the internal and external auditors. And your colleagues in the governance committee are currently looking at some of the internal audit reports that have been issued over the last year or two. And so what they are doing with the monitoring officer is looking at if there's any further improvements, Colin, that we need to make over and above what have already been addressed. So, as you know, I don't get involved with the audit, and I shouldn't get involved. What I'm waiting for is the reports to go forward to the governance committee and the recommendations that the governance committee might want to look at.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on the governance committee, so I look forward to those.
Happy with that, Councillor Sharples? Okay. Any more supplementaries? No. Okay. If I can move on to the next question in the hands of Councillor Walton, please.
Thank you very much. My question is concerning recommendation number 3. There's emphasis here in ensuring that there is appropriate corporate capacity to deliver the projects, and the scrutiny we've also requested information previously. Could the actions be strengthened with a direct reference to assessing and putting in place enough capacity to deliver the projects?
Thanks, Karen. And again, another really good question, because it's clearly we have a big agenda here on the delivery of a number of corporate priorities and political priorities, and the ability to deliver them is a concern, and I think that's on the risk register as well. And so we are currently working with Mark and the team and Gary every element of delivery on our projects, because I think you've also realised as a scrutiny committee that there's some challenges out there, not just about resource, around cost, about programme with post-pandemic. There could be project-specific resource. And so, for example, if you look at the town deal, we've got a strong consultant team on board for the delivery, particularly of the town deal. And it may be that that's the route we go down. We use the consultants where we have identified there may be a resource challenge, but it's a risk, and it's a risk that we're closely analysing, because we've got to be able to deliver them. And again, it's clearly identified as a risk because the peers have raised it, haven't they?
Will we be seeing it coming back to scrutiny then? We've asked for information previously.
Well, yeah, if you've asked for information previously, Karen, that you will get that information. You have my word on that. Okay. And what you'll also see is the individual project reports come through Cabinet and Council. There's an area there to scrutinise fully the deliverability of the schemes that we're putting forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with regard to recommendation 4, Councillor Foster, the medium-term financial strategy highlights an increase in the budget gap, which is increasing up to 2024. Not expecting you to set out your budget in detail now, but what sorts of ideas do you have in terms of filling that gap as we move forwards?
Thanks for that, Michael. That is a very challenging question, Chair. We haven't got all the answers yet, because we don't know what the funding review that the government is going to announce it will be. We don't know the length of any settlements that we're going to get. As you know, they've been in 1 year, settlements for the last 2 or 3 years now, at least, I think. We've also got the challenge that we believe there's going to be further central government cuts to funding of the authority and changes to business rate retention. So through all that we just can't give you an answer on that, Chair, as we're sat here today. So I know Louise and Councillor Matthew Tomlinson are looking at this. We have strategic reserves in a number of areas sat there for when there's a rainy day. And, there's the business rate reserve if we need to use that. There's the other strategic reserves, and we've just got to cut our cloth accordingly. So, we're in control of our own destiny as we're sat here. But if we are subject to any further significant central government cuts, then we're going to have to look closely at everything we deliver. But I can't give you an answer as I'm sat here, Chair.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to page 48, recommendation 5. With the comments about minimum revenue provision for the plans and changes to borrowing, why has this not been picked up earlier? And will it have an impact on our capital programme and future delivery?
Thanks, Matt. It had been picked up, and we're aware of the changes that the central government had introduced regarding the use of the Public Works Loan Board. Our schemes aren't commercial schemes for profit. Our schemes, if you remember, are the delivery of housing, delivery of leisure facilities and extra care. I know Louise and Councillor Matthew Tomlinson have looked closely at this following the direct comments we received from the peers, and we don't have concerns about our ability on the delivery of that capital programme with those schemes. We're confident that we still clearly fall within the criteria that we need to be within to get that debt, for want of a better word, in place. Where you've got to be careful is when you're borrowing money, as other authorities have, to go and buy commercial entities, shopping centres and the like. That's no longer permitted, and if you do that, I don't know if the committee's aware, but you'll be prohibited from borrowing for other schemes on your Public Works Loan Board. So we've got to be very careful on what we select, and we are being. Luckily, the council, as you know, Matt, we're not sat on any debt at the moment, so we're not hamstrung with that.
Thank you. Content with that, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Fairbairn.
Thank you, Chair. My question is reference page 49, recommendation 6. Reference is made throughout the report to a Passport to People programme. What does this look like? What is expected, and how will it And how will the effectiveness be assessed?
I can take this one, thank you. So the Passport to People Management Programme is part of our organisational development programme, and what we're aiming to achieve is a consistent level of management practice across the organisation. So that would include everything from having a standard one-to-one meeting with your line manager right through to being able to manage HR issues, capability processes, and we're looking to train all of our managers to a standard level so that we've got confidence and that managers have the confidence to be able to undertake those processes with their team. So it's about making sure that we're supporting our managers so that they can support our staff as best they can to deliver what we need to. So it's a programme that will run over a period of months. All the managers will go through the programme and it should be completed by April next year, and we'll be measuring that throughout with feedback from managers, and then at the end we'll be doing a full evaluation and assessment to see what the outcomes have been, and we've set our objectives at the beginning, so we'll be measuring back against those throughout the programme.
Will the managers also get in doing CPDs on this, and will that filter down to the staff as well?
So CPD isn't part of this programme, but it is still part of the wider organisational development programme. So managers will continue to do that in line with their areas of technical specialism or service delivery, and that is open to all staff as well to continue to do that as part of their continuing professional development.
Thank you. Next question, Councillor Walton.
Thank you. My question is on page 49 again, recommendation 7. So a commitment is given to an interim review of the community hubs in autumn 2021. Can you explain what methodology will be used in this review and how will all members be involved?
Thanks, Karen. So I know Councillor Aniela Belinsky-Gelder's on with us now as we speak, and it also says there's a full report then coming to Cabinet, I think in March of next year. All members will be involved, Karen. I know she's already engaging directly with the chairs and vice chairs, looking at every element of the hubs, and what I can report back to, and you're probably all very acutely aware of this, and I know you've got a chair of the hubs at the Leyland and Farrington hub here now anyway, that the hubs are working in different ways. All the hubs are working in a slightly different way to deliver the needs, what they see, the needs and the priorities of their local communities, which is pleasing. This is exactly what Aniela wanted to do. And the LGA were really taken quite aback by this. It was really pleasing. They said they've not seen this before. And what they don't want us to do is change our approach to it and being too prescriptive and let the hubs develop. And so the interim work is ongoing now. All members are invited to take part, including the scrutiny committee. And I know it's something that you've personally, you've shown a great interest in, Karen. I know that the parish and town councils as well are directly engaging, and let's see where we get to. It's the pandemic created a few challenges in a lot of areas, didn't it? Because the community hubs were brand new and they did take time to embed. But what we've discovered is actually the pandemic has then assisted us in developing the community hubs, because our communities across the borough had very differing needs. And just to add, I don't know if it came out this in the report, but the LGA peers, some of the peers have spoken to Aniela about possibly delivering a presentation on this format in Strasbourg, because they're so excited. And I know generally as we're involved in the day-to-day nitty-gritty of the hubs, that we might not necessarily understand the actual impact that they are having. And fundamentally, it's about engaging with our local communities and consulting with our local communities. And so really for me, singularly the most important element for the development of those hubs is between now and March, when it's considered at Cabinet on what we do for the next 12 months. But everybody is more than welcome to feed into that review. Positive, negative, indifferent, let's try and make them work.
Okay, can I just follow up on that and say what new opportunities will be provided to raise the profile of the wider services with residents? Have you got any particular projects in mind of how to engage? Because previously we had the forum meetings and we communicated with our residents quite well and took the projects from what they recommended. So what new opportunities will be provided?
I don't want to be absolutely too prescriptive because it's up for the hubs themselves and to look at what engagement they feel, direct engagement they feel they want with their communities. And I promise that's not a cop-out here, is we're really trying this is not to be top-down, bottom-up. And, we've decided, they've started the community conversations, you'll remember. Yeah. They were very different, I can report back, in every hub. They were very different. And, areas, communities like Farrington, Karen, where it's already well-established network, you were getting a lot more feedback quickly than perhaps we were in some areas like in the western parishes, where it's, and that's not criticism, it's just because it's more fragmented because of a bigger geographical area. So we've also then got a lot of projects and quite significant projects planned for the authority over the next 6 to 12 months. And you recall, I can't remember if it was the last cabinet meeting or the one before, that we passed the consultation strategy as well and policy. And again, that needs to embed in, because ultimately we want that to form part of how the hubs work internally. So again, this is how we need to develop this with the hubs. And if we end up with 5 slightly different strategies for community engagement in March of next year, do you know what? I'd be quite pleased with that, because it means it's been thought about and it's not just been dictated from the top.
Okay, thank you.
That was our idea, wasn't it, to have that? That room to grow in slightly different ways.
Absolutely, Chair. I've said this before, and I've said it publicly, that this wasn't my preferred route. Councillor Belinsky-Gelder was very strong in the view, it was in the portfolio, and this is how she thought was the best way forward. And you know what? She's right, and I actually quite like the fact that she is right. I'm really pleased she's right, because it was the right decision, and I'm pleased to see it.
That's good. Thank you. Councillor Buttery, please.
Thank you, Chair. What is meant here? Sorry, I do apologise. I haven't turned it on. Can you hear me? About what is meant here and whether the actions are...
Councillor Buttery, just for the benefit of people that are watching.
Say it again.
Yeah, if you could repeat that, please.
Okay, page 49, recommendation 8, political engagement. Please could you expand more about what is meant here and whether the actions are in-depth enough to help deal with this issue?
Good question, Julie. We're a fairly balanced authority. We're a minority administration. That throws up its own challenges at times, doesn't it? It means that I don't like looking back. There's been some challenges in this place over the last few years. I think, we're not going to deny that. I think we've come through those now. And so what we now need to do is look at ways that all the political groups within the council can try and work better together. Because at the end of the day, I strongly believe that we might be of different political persuasions, but at a local level, we all actually want more or less the same stuff for our communities. And we have to find a way of breaking down the political barriers that still exist within South Ribble. I think we're getting there. I think the Scrutiny Committee has an important part to play in that as well. And I hope you would agree that, the recommendations you put forward to Cabinet are looked at. And I don't recall any of the recommendations that you've ever asked us, particularly through the performance and budget monitoring. We've accepted every recommendation and comment that you've put forward, and because scrutiny is there to be helpful, isn't it? It's to be a critical friend, and that makes us work better together. We've developed the working groups, we have, and the working groups are feeding into policy. Stephen, Councillor Thurban, you're on the climate change working group. You're doing a wonderful job, and that's feeding directly cross-party into policy of this council. What the LGA is saying to us, and it's dead easy for them to say this because it's the LGA, but do more. So we accept that, but sometimes, sometimes it's not necessarily as straightforward as people would think, or as quick as people would think. So we are working on that. We're engaged with that. We're trying to make that work. And, we have group leader briefings where we're working together. We're reintroducing, now the pandemic's over, remember the Saturday morning bacon butties and a coffee and discussing some of the more larger strategic issues that we need to work together on before they go to council, with that view that then actually, because again, I do believe if you take the politics out of it, we agree with a lot of the policies that are coming forward. And then the final element that the LGA want us to look at, and they've offered to assist with this, is our scrutiny and governance committee, and also the structure of our council meetings as well, because they did say this at the last peer review some 4 years ago, was it, that they don't think it's as balanced, as not politically balanced. They think we could do things slightly differently, and that we take too much time up maybe concentrating on certain things that aren't as relevant as they should be. And so they're going to look at the governance and scrutiny committees to see where they can offer improvements, and also offer their advice and assistance on the council meetings, for example, where perhaps they can assist in taking some of the conflict out of those meetings. Now, again, nothing will be decided. It'll be a council decision if any changes do come forward, where we'd all have to agree, but it's genuine in what they're trying to achieve. Will they achieve it? Hopefully, because, you know, we all want to work together, and hopefully post-pandemic, although you could argue that we're still in the midst of a pandemic, but as things get more back to normal, we have an opportunity to work closer together, because then it's in the best service of our community, isn't it? Us arguing with each other all the time doesn't actually sort anything out for anybody.
I would really like to see all that happen, to be honest, as a new member of this council. There's been a big change since I was last here, and I would really like to see you all working together.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I think we've still got some way on that journey, if I'm being honest, but I think we'd all like to see that happening moving forward. Councillor Thurborn. Could you switch your microphone on, please?
Do apologise, Chair. Deep within this report, there is mention to committees, certainly two committees, which are governance and this committee itself, scrutiny, reference to the chairs and the vice chairs of the committee, because normally they would be chaired by the opposition and vice chaired by the opposition equally, and they are currently not. So would you be making those recommendations to change those chairs?
I don't know, but what I would say to Stephen, that there is, over the years, there has been a number of different political parties leading the scrutiny and the governance committees and the vice and vice chairs. You know, there have been changes introduced by your group historically, and I'm not having a fight here, I'm just saying it's the scrutiny committee is chaired by a member of the opposition. It's Councillor Howarth. It's vice chaired by a member of the opposition, Councillor Green. You know, I think your angst is around the governance committee, and what we are. I know you're asking the question, mate. It's been looked at. Everything's always looked at, and there's another annual meeting, isn't there, early next year, and it'll be discussed with the group leaders.
Can I make just another supplementary question? Can I make reference to page 37, please? Second paragraph down and fourth line in. The peer review has actually very much highlighted two words. They are Chorley takeover. I don't like those words for several reasons, because you've just talked about all the cross-party work that we've been doing, which we have, and I'll agree with that. We've done a lot of cross-party work, especially in shared services, because there's members of this committee that have actually worked on shared services. So what can you do to allay the fears of the public that there is no Chorley takeover, and that these words are, where have these words come from, and what is the angst behind them?
There isn't a Chorley takeover. If you go and speak to some of our colleagues in Chorley, they would, you know, there's a bit of a South Ribble takeover in some areas of South Ribble in their views. So it's politics, isn't it? And it's always a teething problem. We were always aware that we're possibly going to have when two authorities come together. I don't think it is really a member view per se anymore. I think members of both authorities are just getting on with it now and enjoying the benefits that we're all receiving, you know, through the shared services. my view is, and I don't know if Mr. Gary Hall wants to say something in a minute, as the Chief Executive might be better to answer this from me. It's more of a perception with certain areas of the staff. And my view, Stephen, is it's a cultural thing, is that when you've been sat working for Chorley Council for 20 years, or you've been sat working for South Ribble Council for 15 years doing it a certain way, and then the two authorities are brought together, and you might have a boss that used to be in Chorley, or a boss that used to be in South Ribble. There's just a cultural challenge that I know that the team are dealing with. We're acutely aware of it. It is not a problem. As every day and month goes by, it's been stated less and less and less. So it's a teething problem that I'm comfortable we've dealt with. Or if we haven't dealt with it, Stephen, Gary speaks with the staff, I think, every month, of both authorities openly, open mic, I think I call it, and that statement is being heard less and less and less.
Gary, have you got anything to say on it?
Yeah, so I do regular staff briefings, and these questions do come up on a regular basis. So my answer to those questions is that the things that we do in the organisation, or I describe them as the Gary Hall way, because it's how I'm used to doing business. So, the things that I've done in my past, things that I've seen and I think work, you replicate things that you think work, and change is difficult. And there have been some things we've done really well. I'm going to hold my hand up here. Some things we've done really well. Some things we can do better. And we can do better with comms. We can do better with explaining to staff why we make some of those changes. And I think that's a lot of the reason why it's seen as a Chorley takeover. And it's my job to try and fix it. We've got the staff survey coming up this month, I think, Vicky, haven't we? And we'll be probing and asking those questions. Why do you feel that, and what can we do to improve things? So, we're not ignoring it. I can see how it's perceived. You try and explain these things. Change is difficult for people, because we are changing a lot of the things. If you look back and look at a lot of the things that we've introduced, it's been really significant, and some would say it's been too quick, and I understand that. But we listen to the staff. We're probably going not as quick as I would like, if I'm honest, in terms of embedding and making some of the changes that I think are required. And staff find that a real challenge. So I suppose that the answer to your question is, we recognise it, I understand it, I've got to find a way of dealing with it. And the way to deal with it is to listen to the staff and try and explain why we do some of the things a bit better. And that's stuff that, is in my gift, and that's stuff that I'm going to have to do.
That was one of my concerns, because there's a journey to be had, and that you've got to bring everybody with you. And if we don't communicate that properly through church services and all the changes made, it won't work properly. So thus we won't see all the benefits, and the staff are the key cogs in the wheel. So can we see some type of matrix, some of the staff survey reports, if we can?
As on all these things, are very transparent about it. I share all the feedback from the staff survey with the staff. And is it open to members to receive it? No problem. Votes and all.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I just add one more point to that? Because I think what didn't help Gary and the team is that if you remember, we made the decision that we weren't going to allow the pandemic to stop the implementation of phase one of the shared services as well. So all the staff were actually not working here or at Chorley, they were all at home. And I think that was a challenge in itself as well, when you're bringing in two teams together and actually not in the office. I think that was a bit of a challenge which was created some angst, but Gary's working through that now.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just add something, I think building relationships is really hard over the computer. And a lot of my relationships and a lot of the things that have been going on at the council have been done over the computer. It's not ideal. So, and this is why, you know, our workplace strategy is encouraging people to come back into work, because I think human contact and the ability to communicate and chat things through, you know, simple things, as many people do now as they come in, stop me in the corridor and go, oh, what about this? I'm able to explain it, you know. So I'm hoping that kind of the fact that we're getting back to something like normal now, and some of the things that we're now going to do in person. So we've got a celebration event coming up in the next month or so. Again, just engaging better with staff so I can explain some of these issues perhaps a bit better, give them the chance to have their say. So, you know, we'll try to make things better and get over this perception of a Chorley takeover.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much for joining. No, you stay there because I've got one more question, if I may. But thanks for coming to assist. In the nicest possible way, are you, in one way, part of the problem? Because you've got that Chorley background, and you come and you're seen as almost imposing the Chorley way of working upon South Ribble. And while South Ribble wasn't doing everything in the right way before, nor were we doing everything in the wrong way either.
Chair, if I may, it's a really good point, that, because when Gary said before the Gary Hallway, I was going to interject, but I thought I'll keep my mouth shut. But trust me, you know, there's the Paul Foster way and the Alistair Bradley way as well in the two authorities, and you know, yeah, and you know, I think Gary, there's some good stuff that they did in Chorley and that they share with us here, but there's also some really good stuff that South Ribble's done has been shared with Chorley, you know, and but what we can't get away from the fact is that our chief executive is the former chief executive of Chorley, and he has best practices that's made that authority highly successful over the last, you know, number of years. And so Gary's trying to bring in best practice, but, you know, we're acutely aware that it's not the Chorley way. It's just the right way. That is significantly different. Doing something the right way is not doing it the Chorley way, in my view.
And again, if I can just reassure members, you know, we've got lots of opportunity for staff to comment on some of the changes. You know, I engage regularly with the union on all changes to policies and practice, those kinds of things. Throughout all the changes we made, there's been opportunities through consultation to make points. So whilst I'm saying it is the way that I do things, there is opportunity for everybody to feed in to some of the changes that were being made. So it may feel like it's been done to, but actually there are those opportunities to consult, to listen to what staff have to say. In fact, you know, some of the key things that they've raised around the pace of change, we've slowed down because we listened to what staff have said and said, well, okay, we'll slow down a little bit. Yeah, thank you, Michael, for pointing that out, that I'm part of the problem.
In the nicest possible way. No,
I accept that.
Councillor Sharples, please.
Yeah, thank you. You might have answered this question partially already, but I'm going to ask it anyway because you've got a celebratory tone to it. We undertake a self-evaluation with Dr. Steph Snake from North West Employers on an annual basis and are held up as best practice nationally. And I can also say that when I've got the couple of external courses I've been on and you speak to members from other authorities, there's no doubt they are impressed with the way we do things. But I'll ask the question anyway. What do you hope to achieve from a separate review and how will the committee be involved? The question at the end of all that celebratory stuff was, what do you hope to achieve from a separate review and how will the committee be involved? It refers to the scrutiny, political engagement and the balance. I should have said
sorry,
that.
You mean, sorry, was this in reference to the LGA support?
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that.
Yeah, it's just looking at again, we don't have to accept anything. We're not necessarily, they're looking at with us, working with us on how we structure our meetings, particularly our public facing elements of our meetings, because 2 peer reviews running now have brought up the same points, that it's just different to what happens elsewhere. Now, it might be that we say, actually, our different is what we want to keep. We like that in South Ribble. But with the governance and scrutiny function, they're just looking at best practice in other authorities. They're going to come here and discuss the scrutiny committee members and the governance committee members, you were the people that will be undertaking this review with the LGA, not the executive. It's not our place to do that. It's just for you as a committee, and your partners in the governance to look at alternative options. You know, are you doing it efficiently? We did this about 3 or 4 years ago, didn't we? Where there was a lot of similarity between what the governance committee and scrutiny committee were looking at, and so some of the work was taken away from the governance committee and brought to the scrutiny committee. I'll give you a prime example of that, Colin, was the budget monitoring. Budget monitoring was being done by 2 committees, and there's no reason for that. So they're just going to come and work with you to look at is it effective scrutiny, explain, I think, and go through what other authorities look to do. So Mike, I'm sure the chair will say, things are done differently at county council. Is that right? I don't know. I'm not commenting on. It's just to give you options to consider how you may want to look at doing this differently, and it may be you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We are a learning organisation in general, and I think the scrutiny committee, so Councillor Howarth as a chairman, myself, our officers and all our members are very keen to learn and improve. And we do feel that we do a decent job in scrutinising, but there's always room for improvement. So we're keen on taking advantage of that.
And just to absolutely clear, Chair, that this was the LGA mentioned this to us. This was not something that came from anyone within the council in any way suggesting that it needed looking at. It was the LGA offering just continued improvement.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from members of the committee? Are there any questions from members of the council who are either dialing in remotely or present this evening? Councillor Mrs Smith, welcome.
Good evening, Mr Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I've listened with quite great interest as a member of the Shared Services Committee to the question from Councillor Thirlbourne regarding the Chorley takeover and the answers given by Gary Hall that it is not all one-way traffic. And there is actually a lot of examples of good practice that we actually export to Chorley. I'm just wondering whether it is something that we could actually do to help improve things by telling us all what good examples we have exported to Chorley. Thank you.
I had a conversation. I'm not going to mention the member of Chorley staff. I'm not going to name him. That would be unfair. But I mentioned that I was I was a councillor at South Ribble. He went, "Oh yeah, he did actually mention the South Ribble takeover to me." What exactly we're doing at South Ribble, he didn't mention, but I'll let Gary Hall take over from there.
Yeah, just to pick up Councillor Smith's point, again, we're happy. I'm happy to share those with the joint committee, and we can work those through. Some examples might be some of the things that are going on in neighbourhoods. I know that you've had that discussion with the politicians over at South Ribble, over at Chorley. There are some elements of some of the software that we use and processes that follow, Firm Step being a good example of that, looking to see whether we can roll that out across the 2 councils as well. So there are a variety of different examples. Pest control, where the service, I think, is better. There are some areas where I think the services are better at South Ribble, and I've got to set that learning and say, well, actually, why is that? Some of the good examples that we've got here are things like neighbourhood services and enforcement, how that's done in a very generic way. So lots of things that we can learn from in terms of how models of delivery for the council. Just back to Councillor Thirlbourne's point, the issue is, and we can't escape this. Sometimes during shared services, attention is required at one particular council for a variety of different reasons. What tends to happen is people notice. So people notice that actually, all right, we're all in shared services, but I'm having to spend more time on X rather than Y. And that's always going going to be the basis on which shared services is done. We've always said there will be peaks and troughs in demands for services. We've got a very simplistic model about how we recharge in the main. There are some exceptions to this, but in the main, we say that, well, actually, broadly speaking, the services we deliver are of the same scale, size and nature, broadly speaking. So we have a very simplistic model for sharing out the costs. But it does mean that during that period, there'll be times when more time is spent dealing on issues with one council other than the others. At the minute, and I don't know who you spoke to, but I imagine that individual is probably spending more time at South Ribble than they are at Chorley, because that's where the demands for the service is at the moment. But that doesn't mean to say it won't change, and it will change over a medium term.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs Smith, any further questions? No.
No, that's thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from other members not on the committee? No, thank you. Okay, so we need to formulate some recommendations as a scrutiny committee then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just thinking about some of the themes and discussions of the meeting, some of the recommendations that the committee might like to adopt could include: the committee welcomes the report and outcome of the peer review and looks forward to the working together on the action plan. The committee is grateful for the commitment to develop clear measures for the action plan and that monitoring reports will be presented to Cabinet and scrutiny. The committee recommends that recommendation 3 be strengthened to reflect that capacity will be assessed and put in place to deliver corporate projects. The committee is grateful for the offer of the employee survey results being made available to the scrutiny committee once complete, and the committee requests examples of best practice adopted across both South Ribble and Chorley councils be presented to a future shared services joint committee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Darren. Are members happy to accept those recommendations? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Can I thank Councillor Foster, Chief Executive and Vicky for your time this evening on that report. And, look forward to us all working together to achieve this. Okay, colleagues, moving on to agenda item 7. And the update of the new leisure company and future leisure projects. If I can invite Councillor Tiverington, the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member, supported by Mr Lester this evening. Thank you. And I understand that Mr Anderson is joining the meeting remotely. So welcome, Neil, as well. Councillor Tiverington, could I invite you to say a few words by means of introduction, please?
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thanks for the invite. Excuse me, down at the water. No, I'll be all right, I think. I think the discussions, in relation to leisure, have been thoroughly debated at council. We've adopted the sport and leisure strategy. We have adopted the taking back the leisure services back in house. I think everybody, that's been fully debated. And the need to do that has been discussed at council and been agreed. I think that everybody is aware of why we're setting up a council wholly owned company, and I think the report in the background sets out what we're trying to achieve, and I think that we're in early days in terms of the company, but we are making progress in delivering our leisure local and delivering what we're trying to achieve in terms of making access to activities of choice easier for people to make, so that they can enjoy a healthier lifestyle. I think everybody will have read about the situation regarding health inequalities and the fact that we've flatlined in terms of longevity, and indeed those people who are living in areas that are less affluent than others are enduring more periods of ill health, and that is a productivity problem as well as a moral one. So I think this is just a report to update the committee on where we're going, the direction of travel, and I'll obviously prepare to ask any questions if there's any technical questions. I'm sure Mark can help me out. Mark and Neil can help me out. Okay, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those words, which are helpful. Turning to the report, I have to say, as chairman this evening, in terms of the report we've received, it seems to me to be somewhat wide of the mark in terms of what we'd actually asked for as a scrutiny committee. So we'd effectively asked for an update on how bringing the leisure contract in-house had actually proceeded, had it been successful. But it's difficult to ascertain that from the report, if I'm being honest. How has it actually gone? What have the benefits been from bringing it in-house? And what have we actually learned from the process? So have you got any comments on that, please?
Well, I'm surprised at those comments, really, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, I mean, I think it has been successful by bringing it back in-house because it has fitted in with the strategy that we're seeking to employ. We are in the process of both making it more attractive for people to join the gym with a number of different sorts of pricing issues, so that we appeal to certain, particular groups. Do you want me to add to that? Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, I also think that by taking it back in-house, we are being able to, in a hands-on way, be able to sort of implement our leisure and sports strategy. No?
Yeah, Chair, if I could just add to that. When I first saw the invite to this committee, I thought, crikey, it's very soon, that, isn't it? The company's 6 weeks old. So I was slightly concerned about the amount of progress we're able to report. And then I reflected on it and thought, actually, it is quite good, because if we come now so early in the process, when we come back next time, we'll be able to demonstrate progress. Apologies if the officers have misunderstood the ask that was made of the committee. We have loads and loads of information that we could have shared with you, which is probably more relevant to the question you were asking, in respect of. We have gone through a number of phases in relation to the bringing in-house and formation of the company, and that has been, alongside business continuity issues, that has been the absolute priority in the first stage. So we've had two TUPE processes. We've had the small matter of a pandemic in terms of context, and we've had the company formation as well. So the company was only formed six weeks ago. In terms of the progress that's been made on those broader themes that you're talking about, I think those are long-term gains that we will hopefully be able to demonstrate, in line with what Mick said about the overall council's approach and strategy towards having more control over the leisure function, and also having more influence over the positive outcomes for residents as a result of that, in terms of health inequality and all of those things. What we have in terms of the paperwork here is a work in progress. So we've shared with you a document which is the first report to the Strategic Partnership Board, which again shows a work in progress. So we've been trying to be as transparent as possible there. Had we shared one of the other documents that precedes this, which was the Company Formation Action Plan, you would have seen a document this long with probably 100 actions on it at one point. a bunch of actions for HR, a bunch of actions for IT, a bunch of actions for finance. That's been the priority piece of work in the period to date. We're now just coming out the other end of that. We've got the report that was the first report to the Strategic Partnership Board. And as we move forward now, things are firming up. We are still working through some issues through company formation. So there are still some issues with IT, still some issues with financial systems, which are linked to IT, and some broader issues that are not peculiar to South Ribble. They actually are national issues, and those issues are around staffing. There is obviously a problem with recruitment across all industries. This is particularly relevant to the leisure industry in relation to swimming teachers and people with formal qualifications, poolside qualifications, and that's a national shortage as well. So that's one of the big challenges. What I would say in terms of measuring our success on this during this initial period is our main success is business continuity. We have we have had the centres open as far as any regulation has allowed in relation to the pandemic. We have not seen a massive decline in the range of number of services that we've been able to offer during this time. And the team that we've inherited from the previous provider, Serco, it has performed really, really well. And they have not been sidetracked by all of those issues I've talked to you about, including the two TUPE processes, and they've got on with the job as much as possible. So I think that is the measure of success. In terms of numerative measures of success going forward, all of the performance measures are in place. And when we come back to this committee over time, I'm hoping you see in the direction of travel, which is showing increased revenues, increased profitability, but just as importantly, increased outcomes for the residents as well. Sorry for the overly long answer.
Thank you. Councillor Fairbairn.
Don't mind if I was a quick supplementary. Just thought.
No, by all means, I very much encourage supplementaries.
What most people don't know, I'm a former soldier, so I'm very much for veterans, very much for veterans' mental health. Serco certainly made me a promise when they were in charge that veterans would get priority and honour the armed forces coming. Are we still doing that? Very much so.
Yes, yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Neil Anderson, I understand wishes to speak. Good evening.
You're muted, Neil.
Apologies, Chair. Very quickly, just again, just to add to Mark's apologies if we misinterpreted. What might help members is if on section 2 of the report that was taken to the first Strategic Partnership Board, if you break it down, what we say is highlight where things are happening as a result of a new company and working more, perhaps now that we're in-house, in a way that perhaps we didn't work quite so proactively before. So I won't go through the whole of section 2 of that report, but I just did some examples of working with Renshaw College on recruitment opportunities, working with the Children's Deaf Society, working with the Active Health team to deliver weight management. One thing I would point people towards 2.13, page 59. Working with children with SEN is something that we're able to do in a much more proactive way than perhaps we could before. And the last one was really 2.20. Members may be aware that the government launched a scheme this summer for 700 places to be found for children on free school meals, to be given food and activity over some holidays. Having the leisure centres in-house allowed us to take on board a member of staff within the leisure centres that coordinated this scheme across both Active Health, the communities team and leisure centres about attracting 240 places upwards, which is a terrific result regionally of getting kids in that programme. So just a few examples of where members can be maybe assured that things are happening on the ground that perhaps we couldn't have done quite so easily in the previous section. And at the end of that report, as Mark has pointed out, we do highlight some of the issues that we do have ongoing, which we recognise still need to be resolved. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Councillor Buttery, please.
Sorry about that. The report isn't really structured in a helpful way for members. How is it proposed to report on performance with the leisure company to members in the future, and will it be more user-friendly?
Well, I mean, I suppose, I mean, we're being asked to do two different things there. First of all, we were told that the report wasn't in depth enough, but I think Mark has said is that look, the company's been formed for 6 weeks, and I think that as far as we're concerned, we're anxious to measure what we're doing. I mean, along the lines of what we've got in the leisure strategy. So, I mean, if there's any format in particular that Scrutiny wants it presented, then please let us know. But I mean, as a council, you would expect us to say, well, look, there's our strategy. This is where we started from. This is what our aim is, and how are we getting there? And I, fully accept, having sat on Scrutiny, is that you will be wanting to know is that, whether that direction of travel is progressing at an acceptable pace.
That's fine. I understand the 6 weeks. It's very difficult in such a short period of time to produce it. So thank you for your answer.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure we will come back to you with the style of reports that might be more helpful. But we value yourself, having been the chairman of Scrutiny for a good number of years. You appreciate what we need in terms of being able to scrutinise moving forwards, which is in all our best interests, isn't it? Councillor Philboy.
Welcome.
Councillor, your microphone, please.
It's too eager. Sorry, Chair. What stage are we at with the employees at the leisure centres? They moved over from Serco to the council in April, and have they now moved employer to the leisure company? How are the staff being supported through these changes?
Well, you're right. I mean, they transferred over from TUPE, and I think, when we took it back in-house, I think we reported it. We are a living wage employer, and all staff have benefited in a way because, well, in some way or other, in terms of a salary increase, but also become members of the pension scheme. Then there was a further TUPE, and I fully accept that to go into the wholly owned company. I think that obviously they transferred over on TUPE. We're now in the process of harmonising or in discussions with the unions and the employees in order to sort out any anomalies that there are, and we'll obviously be sorting the terms and conditions out in accordance with what the council's policy is.
I have a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
I think you've half answered it already. What are the employees' views of the change? Has any kind of survey or engagement work taken place?
Mark, can you?
Yeah, so you're quite right in highlighting this, because the employees have been in an unfortunate situation of changing employer twice. Yeah. To some extent, the first change in terms of the transfer to the council was the more difficult one for the employees, because many of them hadn't been through a TUPE process prior to that. So what we did, in addition to the standard statutory process, and we had an increased level of engagement with the unions, we actually had some staff engagement sessions as well. that we also invited the unions to, and we also encouraged the unions to actively recruit local representatives from within the leisure staff. By the time we got to the second TUPE, they were kind of almost old hands at it because they understood the process. A lot of their concerns had been allayed through the first TUPE process. So it wasn't so problematic. But what we've continued to do after that is, through any change, we've continued to have meetings on site with the leisure centre management and the local staff. And Neil's been attending those sessions as well. We've also invited the union to attend those meetings whenever they wish. We've kind of hit a point now whereby the change of employer is now old news, yeah, and people have realised that things are carrying on. What Councillor Titherington's alluding to is what we've inherited is a situation whereby we have got employees on predominantly 3 sets of terms and conditions, depending who they work for at various stages in the leisure contract. So we've got some staff who used to work for South Ribble Borough Council many years ago when it was last in-house. We've got other staff that were taken on by Serco on one set of terms and conditions, and other staff that were taken on by Serco on a different set of terms and conditions. So what we're seeking to do now, as Councillor Tomlinson said, is Titherington, sorry, I'm looking at the side there. Titherington, I should just say Mick, shouldn't I? Is equalise that, yeah. And there's two main considerations around that. One is the aspirations of the council in terms of being a good employer, even if it's been an indirect employer, because we're doing it via the company, and the commercial aspects of that as well, because some of that equalisation may come with a cost. So we will be, rather than that being purely a company decision, that's actually going to be a decision that's made by members as well, because there potentially cost implications to that. Again, even though it's a company, the company has mirrored all of the council's policies and procedures in relation to things like HR. So it will be following the normal council process for changes to terms and conditions. We're just at an early stage of that, and Neil and I have been discussing this today. We've had a route map supplied by HR, which has got some indicative milestones and timescales on, and we're just starting that kind of process at the moment.
Just another quick one. Did we lose any staff in the TUPE process for whatever reason? And say we lost them because we needed to, the TUPE process says we had to lose them, but did we lose any staff because A, they retired, B, they thought they'd had enough, all that type of thing?
I'm going to let Neil see if he knows the answer to that.
That's a very good question, Councillor Fairbairn, because actually I don't think it was a TUPE process that we lost staff, but having a long lockdown where leisure centres were closed for a long time, and Mark's alluded to this, there was a bit of a drift away from the industry. So a number of people who were sat maybe on furlough, maybe thought about starting another career. So it is, to be transparent, and all leisure services, but we have lost some staff, not because they're upset with the TUPE process, but through the lockdown process, they chose to go elsewhere. So when we TUPE staff, we TUPE the odd role that was actually vacant. So I would suggest that's been more of the issue for us rather than the TUPE process itself, Councillor Fairbairn. And I go round to visit the leisure centres every fortnight. I try and get to every management team every fortnight of all 4 centres, and that's come across a bit from staff. The TUPE process itself, that they weren't overly scared of and felt that it was, within the speed that we did it was well done, and he corrected our colleagues in HR and other services across the council in supporting us doing that. But but the inertia of lockdown has led to some people leaving as a career.
You're right to raise that. I think Neil's correct. What we probably need to highlight is that there is a secondary risk at the terms and conditions stage that some staff decide that the changes are not for them. And so I'll be just highlighting that risk. Hopefully, whenever we go through this process, that's not an outcome that we're looking for. But automatically, what you tend to find with that very often is it's people at different stages in their career that, think, well, I've worked here for a long time and it's time for me to move on, etc., etc. But there's always a risk. But Neil, I think I'm right in saying it tends to be more prevalent in the terms and conditions changes than a TUPE process.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Yeah, with T's and C's are fundamental.
Thank you. Is it relevant? Only because I've got two other members waiting to come in. I'll bring you back in.
Very quickly.
Go on then.
I can understand that from terms and conditions because I've worked in an industry where there was about 8 different sets of terms and conditions, and that's where the contention was. Terms and conditions we do need to get on top of and make sure that us, if we have, as members, have to see them and make sure they're fair. That's what we need to do, and it's all about the communication process to the staff, because in the railway industry it was very badly done. So the staff need to be communicated to and explain what the changes are and what the benefits and disadvantages are. That's all.
Well, I can give a categoric assurance that that will be done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question's been half answered already, but has there been or will there be any official staff training to make it easier for the staff to integrate into South Ribble's procedures?
Well, I think that we have an obligation as an employer, as a good employer, to continue to train staff to make sure that they deliver the service that our residents expect. So there will be a continuing process in that. Now, I would expect the management in our leisure centres to constantly review that, see what we need, what skills we need, and whether we have to train existing staff up or seek new employees. I mean, I think you're talking about staff, because of the reasons that Mark said, there's always, people are at different stages of their life, aren't they? Some people are, pursuing a career, some people are coming to the end of it, some people are just have enough and find another career. So, I think that's just the sort of the day-to-day things that employers have to cope with. But other than that, if you're going to be a good employer, then you want your staff to be, first of all, properly paid and rewarded, adequately for the job that they do, and secondly, to be fully trained and equipped to be able to deliver those services that we want them to deliver.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. My question was a similar one to Councillor Fairbairn's. My daughter's swimming lessons were cancelled 2 weeks ago because the teacher had left. I'm just wondering if you think there's any more disruption to customers' lessons or activities in the future.
Well, Mark can come in a minute, but I think what I would say is that whenever we have to cancel a lesson, or when we can't provide that service that we want, it's extremely regrettable, and it's unfortunate, and it's something that we don't want to see. Having said that, there will always be situations that are unforeseen that we will have to take, certain actions for it. I think that from a administration point of view, what I can say is that we would want to offer the terms and conditions that will attract the personnel that to do the job that, as I keep saying, that delivers what we're trying to deliver. But I don't think we can give any guarantees that that's not going to happen, because there's always going to be some short-term problem. But I think we are having some difficulties with recruitment. That is a fact. But we are endeavouring to sort of plug those gaps so that we can make sure that, you know, what we're doing in the leisure centres is what our residents want. I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
Yeah, I can't comment on that particular incident, but I think it is probably linked to this shortage of swim teachers that we've got, whereby, you know, very often, if you've got enough resilience and enough swimming teachers, if somebody can't attend for whatever reason, you've got a pool, pardon the pun, of other staff that might be able to be called in at short notice. That's not the case at the moment. As I say, we are doing things about that. We have been out to recruitment. That recruitment has been a struggle in line with the national trend. And what we're doing in response to that is setting up our own in-house, well, they're officially accredited, but we're delivering them within the service, training sessions, so we can get more qualified staff in.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Thurlborn, did you have any further questions before?
Got one left.
Do you want to bring that in now? Yes, yeah.
Basically, what we're saying is this report's a baseline, basically, isn't it? It's the baseline of what we've got now. So when we next see it, we can see we're looking for improvement upon improvement upon improvement upon improvement, basically. I want it constant. I'm a constant improvement guy. So I understand there's going to be ups and downs. I understand that there's going to be there will be gains and there will be problems. But I like to see solutions to problems. I don't believe if there's mistakes made that we learn from those mistakes. We have what I call AARs, after action reports, that we all sit down, we look at it and resolve that. And I think from what we can see from here, that this is just our benchmark. From what I'm gaining from you, this is just a benchmarking process, in essence.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, as Marcus said, I mean, and as we've reported, we're 6 weeks in, but you have to, you know, with the company, I think we need to look at it in the round. I mean, we've discussed, you know, the issues that we've got with employment, but we've also got to look about what we're trying to achieve. And I keep coming back to that. I mean, you know, this is about our residents' health and well-being. Now, you're talking about two things. I mean, because the council has decided, and it's all for us, making sure that our residents enjoy a healthy environment. I mean, and that's what we're all working for. I think that then it's for us to ask the management, the staff and the management to deliver what we've set is the strategy. Now, I mean, we've got to, and the scrutiny, you know, is an integral part of that. You've got to measure is to say, well, hang on, are we making that progress? Are we doing that? Are we fulfilling what we wanted the company to do, but also what our strategies to do? So, yeah, I mean, this is the first one. I mean, the next one that comes along, I would expect you to be saying, you know, not you personally, but the committee to be saying, well, yeah, hang on, you know, have we done this? Why did that go wrong? Why has that gone right? You know, and are we making the progress that we want to? That's an integral part of the scrutiny's function.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is slightly related to my previous question. What difference have our leisure centre customers and wider residents seen since the leisure centres were brought in-house?
Well, I think that it is probably too soon to say that they have achieved the change that we are seeking. I mean, I think in the previous discussion we talked about embedding change, didn't we? You know what I mean? But what I would say is that, you know, they say 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step, and we're on the first steps, and we have had. I mean, you know, I say honestly, there have been problems. There have been problems with the IT. There's been problems with the connectivity in the early stages. We've been working hard on that. we're in the process, and hopefully next week we'll be able to launch the website, and people will be able to sort of book on easily and all that. So there have been issues. We're seeking to tackle them, and I'm hoping that to answer to the previous question is that you will ultimately be able to see in the next report that, look, this is what we've done, this is what we've set in place, and this is how we're progressing towards improving the services. But I mean, I have to say, I think the staff in the centres have rallied to the change. I mean, they've been through those changes, and they have been working really flat out to try and sort of resolve the problems that we've got, and to sort of get the thing that we're all looking for.
Thank you, Chair. Has there been any survey of customers, and are there any plans to carry out any surveys in the future?
There hasn't been any surveys of customers, but I think there will. I think there should be a plan. We need to ask them at some stage. Yeah.
It's just to add to that. So again, it goes back to that us being at a point in time when we're reporting back to the committee. There's a suite of other documents that we're now working on. One of them's already drafted, but it's a marketing plan. And as part of that marketing plan, it is around how we engage with our customers. So in relation to Mick's already alluded to the fact that we've got a new app that's live, and we've got a new website going live. We are going to be running some campaigns at the optimum times, which is the optimum time for gym memberships is when everybody's eating too much at Christmas and decides that, I'm going to go back to the gym or go to take up swimming. So
pay to go to the gym.
Yeah.
You don't have to go as well, do you?
Yeah. So that's within the plan. Now, as part of that marketing plan, you're quite right. We do need to understand our customer base some more, and there's a cohort of customers there that every kind of leisure facility has of lapsed members. Yeah. So it's about understanding the why and how we re-engage with those people and get them signed up again. Again, all of these what are business as usual issues around lapsed memberships has been exacerbated by the pandemic, because people have not been able to go to the gym, so we've suspended payments, and then people have got out of the habit, or some people are still concerned about going back in enclosed spaces and exercising next to a group of other people. So we've got all that to contend with. So as Mick said, we're at an early stage. We're not underestimating the scale of the task, but again, that's exacerbated by things like staffing issues, etc. But we are now putting the plans and the documentation in place, and we'll be able to share those with this committee as they're produced.
And I think there is another cohort that we're seeking to attract, and that's those that have not been involved in it, in the past. I mean, if we're, serious in tackling, health inequalities, and we know that, health is one of the determinants of health and well-being, is that we've got to reach out to those that wouldn't traditionally engage in those activities. So that's fundamental to sort of what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sharples, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At the top of the report on page 51, it says it is the report of both the Director of Commercial and the Director of Communities. Where does accountability and responsibility lie for leisure centres in the officer structure?
Well, I mean, there is the commercial side with the company, and that will rest with Mark. On the health and well-being side and the community side, that will be with Jennifer. And I suppose, I mean, from an asset point of view, that's with Councillor Matthew Tomlinson. For how we're running it and how we're achieving our leisure strategy, that's with me.
Wow.
Just
who does the book stop with?
it just shows that the nature of the service is multidisciplinary and multifaceted. Just to explain the relationship between me as a director and Jennifer as a director within the council. The company formally has 3 company directors, of which I'm one. Yeah, and our chief finance officer and Chris Moister's the other one. Yeah, that is purely for the purposes of Companies House and and all of the legislation and regulation that goes with it. Within those 3 company directors, I'm the director responsible for the operation of leisure. So on a day-to-day basis, the book stops with me. Now, what we used to have when we had an external provider is somebody within the council who is effectively the client and responsible for monitoring the performance of the provider. That's Jennifer. So effectively, Jennifer is standing behind me and saying, right, where are we up to with this? Where are we up to with that? It is a bit of an artificial construct in that we both work within the local authority, but it's working. And this is why when you see these reports, this is why we've set in place a formal governance structure whereby I'm being held to account and everything's being documented, and that any deviation from the plan or failure in performance is reported through to the council as well. So all of that's in place, and it was all outlined in the full council report that sought approval for the formation of the company.
Good answer, thank you.
Just to expand a little on the governance, so there's talk in the report of the Leisure Strategic Partnership Board. So how does that fit in within the governance structure of the leisure company? And what member involvement is there in the governance structure of the partnership?
I think, Chair, if I might answer that, the easiest way for this committee to get a full understanding of the governance structure is for us to recirculate the section of there was a decision-making matrix in the council report that outlined all of the interrelationships between the company, the memberships of the various bodies, etc., etc. So I can answer the question in detail tonight, but rather than go through it, if we could share that. It probably answers all of the questions. That specific body that you mentioned there, that is that interface between Jennifer as the client and me and the other people involved in the company, in terms of making sure that on a set basis we are reporting back on the outcomes and the financial outputs that we're duty bound to do through a service specification that's in place. What the matrix also shows is what the interface is between the council decision-making bodies and the company. So if I could ask Darren to circulate that extract, I think it should answer any questions there are.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. That makes sense. Thank you. Councillor Walton, please.
The figures within that report, were a point in time, and that was the first strategic partnership group that we had. What Jennifer demanded that we had some figures, even if those figures needed to be tested. So you'll see there's a disclaimer on the figures. Part of the reason for that is those IT issues. So all the money's coming in, but some of it was coming in through money collected at the leisure centre, and some of it was still coming into the council as well. So there's had to be some manual reconciliation been going on, and our accountants have been very busy sorting all of this out. We're getting there now. There's still an outstanding issue with the interface between some software that sits at the leisure centres where we collect money and the council's main finance system. And we've got the company working on that. There's a patch or an add-on that needs doing to actually sort that out. In terms, So in terms of what we've got at the moment in terms of the measure of performance and success, is we've got a global figure in as much as it cost X previously to the council. for the whole of the leisure operation to be run by Serco. So that exercise was done at the point that the decisions were made about bringing it in-house and the formation of the company. There's actually, and I'm not going to quote the figures because I'll get them wrong if I do it without looking at them, but there was actually some further slack identified in those figures, because what we realised once we got under the skin of the Serco contract is that they were carrying vacancies that were non-essential posts, etc., which was forming part of their overall cost base, but they weren't spending the money. As it stands at the moment, the accountants are not beating me with a stick. But what I would say is, hand on heart, this is far too early at the moment, given everything we've said about the pandemic and the fact that we've taken a hit on how much we've been open over the past few months. We've not got any baseline to a normal. We needed a full year's trading, really, unaffected, in order to establish that baseline. As it stands at the moment, we're not envisaging major problems. However, I would caveat with that, with its early days, and it's a real challenge at the same time to recover from the pandemic and the staffing issues we've got.
Yeah. So can we look forward to a more informed financial report of where the company is at in the future?
I think just reflecting on one of the earlier questions, which is very much in that vein, we've got a service specification which is huge, which, listening to what you've said tonight, is not what you want us to report on. We could probably produce a dashboard which has some key information about the key performance indicators around financial performance, around memberships and all of those kind of things. So that's probably one of the outcomes from this evening.
Okay. And can I just ask the cabinet member, it says here on page 53, the comments of the statutory finance officer, it says that there will be £3.769 million in the 21-22 capital programme and 20,503,000 in the 22-23 capital programme for sport and leisure. Can you just make a comment on that for me, please?
I think that has been discussed previously. We talked about 3.79 76. I think we're talking about...
Councillor Tiverton, your microphone, please.
Sorry. Yeah. But could you answer that? I mean, I think that the 20 million refers. Refers. I mean, the 3.769 million is the existing allocation.
Okay.
For the 20 million has been allocated for future years for the new leisure centre that we're hoping to build.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You fine with that, Councillor Walton? Okay, thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. On page 61, it refers to the management accountant. Is this a existing South Ribble Borough Council employee, or is that an external organisation?
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So what we've done as far as possible when we formed the company is we've identified a budget from the company to fund central support services. So there's an element of the company funding some posts in HR, in communications, etc., etc. The list goes on. But one of those is additional resource into the finance. Into finance. So effectively, there is additional resource which has been dedicated to looking after the books, as it were. The company will have to also employ some external auditors and stuff like that. But in terms of the day-to-day monitoring of the budget, because we're using the same finance system, so within Civica, within the council's finance system, a mirror or shadow, I'll get all this wrong, Gary, in terms of the technical side of it, but there is a mirror system being put in place that we can all access. Yeah. So it's going through the council system, basically.
Sorry, so it was, the individual was a Southfield Borough Council employee before the company was formed, or is it a new member of staff, or?
To be honest, I'll need to check because I don't know how the bit that we're interested in is the books get done and we have a member of staff allocated to it. I'll have to double check what finance have done in relation to where that individual was before, because finance have recruited several people. It's included in the council. So employees, that's part.
It's a new employee, and that was included in the council report. The employee is in shared services, and the way that we're constructed in the minute, the finance staff are employed by Chorley, obviously work right across the two councils.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions from members of the committee? Okay, if I can open it up to questions from members of the council who are not members of the scrutiny committee, either logging in remotely or present this evening. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you.
If you could come to the microphone, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, just a comment. I mean, I think your comment with regard to the committee's comment with regard to the report is, you know, very relevant, but it is new days. They've already said it only started 1st of September, I think it was. I mean, I've sat where Mick's sitting for many a year, bringing reports to this committee, annual reports, basically, which are the guide. And I suppose really from looking at a baseline of leisure centre activity, I would have thought the baseline was somewhere near what the Serco were achieving or the leisure trusts were achieving, because you've got the figures for that year on year on year on year of gradual improvement, and I've yet to sort of sit there and present what was a poor report to Scrutiny. Scrutiny have always been positive about the report that was that was brought forward, so I thought those baseline figures would be useful. I'm just looking at the sort of staffing situation. There's two people on there that I know reasonably well from a few years, who I know will work well for the council, because they work well for Serco within delivering their the Serco's commercial strategy and the leisure strategy, which is Paul Shannon and Danny Delvard, who have been around for many years, and I'm sure they will certainly help deliver that without any problem at all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Any comment?
Well, I mean, just to say, I mean, I think I would agree, is that if we're looking to challenge ourselves in terms of the number of people who are using the leisure centres, I think that we have to go back to pre-pandemic, notwithstanding the problems that the pandemic has brought to us that we'll have to overcome. But ultimately, the challenge will be for us to improve and extend, you know, a wider range of people who, you know, the throughput, the people who are using the leisure centres.
Thank you. Can I bring the Chief Executive in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think I could just clarify this. So the in the business plan and in the model presented to council, the assumptions that were made were that the baseline will be met by 50% in the first year, 75% in the second year, and back to normality in the third year. And those were the assumptions that were made.
Thank you. That's helpful. Councillor Mrs. Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to go back to the comments that were made earlier regarding TUPE, if that's okay. Obviously, I didn't have the opportunity before. But as a member of the Governance Committee and the annual report that is coming to us, we have a comment from our external auditors that there is a pension deficit from the leisure services of I think it's 2.3 million, 2.5 million, can't quite remember. I'd just like to know where that liability will now sit. As you said that we tupid the people over from Serco to South Ribble, and then we tupid them over from South Ribble to the new leisure company. So where does that liability of 2.5 million sit within those TUPE transfers, please? Thank you.
Well, I mean, Gary's on his way, but I mean, I think it was something like 3 million, wasn't it? Was the figure that we needed to pay to make up the prepayments on the pensions. But I mean, he'll come in, but I mean, I would be absolutely devastatedly surprised if it was 3 million. It would be all down to the leisure staff.
Okay, so so I think the finance director did try to explain this at the last cabinet meeting. Or was it council meeting? I can't remember which, but anyway. When the staff transferred to Serco, there was a pension deficit at that point in time. That deficit was not cleared. So that sat on the books of the partnership during the period that the contract was in place. On the return of the staff, the liability has changed for a variety of different reasons, because the pension fund has performed in a particular way during that period. During the period of the contract and following the triennial revaluations, Serco were required to effectively pay a contribution towards that pension deficit, and they did that throughout the period of the contract. However, at the point of transfer, there is still a pension deficit, because all local authorities, and effectively is a local authority scheme that the staff have, or some of the staff had, not all staff, is repaid over a period of 19 years. Okay, so at any point in time, you are not going to have cleared that deficit. It takes 20 years to clear the deficit. So there is a deficit that will be subsumed into effectively the current council, the council's pension liability that it currently has. Yeah, and the contributions to that will be made through the contract, in essence, and they're budgeted. So the deficit is being paid off over a 19-year period. The contributions are being made by both the company and the council, in effect, because the council's paying for it anyway, in respect of clearing that liability. I hope that answers the question. But I'm happy to clarify if it hasn't.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Smith, would you like to come back in?
Yes, thank you. Very interesting that, because when it was transferred in, was it 2005? It was actually had a liability at that point, and that liability has obviously gone on for many, many years. And now the council is having to take back that, and the council, do I understand it, what you're saying is that the new company will now pay into South Ribble's pension fund to actually attempt in the next 19 years to clear that pension deficit?
Correct.
Thank you for that. I'm sure it will help get together.
Okay. Thank you for the questions.
Mr. Smith. We'll make a note of that.
Mr. Anderson has been waiting patiently. If I could bring you in.
Chairman, the Chief Executive answered my question about the 3-year process of getting back to where we were. So he answered it very well, better than I probably would have done.
Okay, thank you. And I've got Councillor Mrs Smith, who's indicated again to speak, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, it must be a legacy.
No problem at all. Okay.
Thank you.
I don't think there's no further questions, and unfortunately we have no members of the public present. And so I think that brings this item to a conclusion. If we can look at some recommendations then, please. Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from the discussion tonight. The committee welcomes the Cabinet Member and Director's update on the Council's future strategy with regards to the leisure centres and in tackling health inequalities in the borough. The committee will consider the information needed to scrutinise the leisure company performance in the future, including the offer of developing a performance and financial dashboard. The committee is grateful for the reassurance that an engagement and marketing plan is being developed for the leisure centres, taking into account customer insight. And the committee looks forward to receiving the governance structure of the leisure company and that it be shared with the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Members, have any further comments on those?
Yes, can I?
Councillor Walton.
A comment. I would like to see this item on every scrutiny meeting that we have, similar to what we had for the Worden Hall project. I think it's something that we really need, even if it's only just an update of what is actually happening. I think we need to keep a close eye on this rather than just a 6-monthly or an annual report.
Thank you for that. I personally would totally agree with that. I think this needs to be a regular item moving forward. I'd also like to see a recommendation around the consultation aspects with employees and users. I think it's important that takes place as soon as possible. I've got Mr. O and I've got Councillor Fairborn.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that, and I understand the committee's desire to see stuff, but it creates an enormous amount of work for staff. There are mechanisms in place to monitor the contract, and I think it's appropriate that it comes back regularly, but I'd like to see it aligned with those reporting mechanisms, so it's not additional work. And that would be just a request to the committee, because that is done on a regular basis, and we will get into a routine and it will be relatively easy. But if the periods don't align, it's extra work for staff.
How regular would that be?
Quarterly.
Okay.
It's an ask. It's for the committee to determine, but it will benefit us enormously if we align it with those.
Thanks for that. We'll consider that in a minute then. Thank you. Councillor Fairborn.
I think we've actually touched on this. I think the committee, more like a high-level dashboard report would be better for us. We don't need to see Gantt charts and stuff like that, because we can discern decisions from that a lot quicker, and we don't need all the deep delve. We know what projects are going on in the council. We see them quite a lot.
Chair, can I suggest that actually that's allocated to a couple of members to agree, and then we can.
Pardon, sorry, can you repeat that?
Allocated that task to a couple of members, maybe on the committee, so we can agree the format. Because we need to start collecting the data, don't we, in a particular way. So the sooner that's done, the better, rather than wait for the next committee.
And from my perspective, I think the request for it to be quarterly rather than at every meeting, I think is a reasonable request. Are members prepared to accept that request? Yeah, so if it comes back approximately every 3 months, that would be helpful. Okay, otherwise I'm happy to accept those recommendations. Can I thank Mark, Neil and Councillor Tiverington for your time this evening and for fielding a wide range of questions. And we look forward to seeing you at future meetings. Thank you. Are members okay to go straight on to item 8, or do you want a short adjournment? Okay. It's fine. Okay, so for item 8, progress report on Word and All. We welcome Mr Lester again, who's just presented the previous item, and we welcome Councillor Tomlinson, who's been waiting patiently. Thank you very much for doing so. Would you like to give a few words by way of introduction, please?
Sure, thank you, Chair. I put this here, but if Mike needs reminding who I am, I can always just turn it round that way a bit. But thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to come back at what is an exciting time for the development of Word and Hall. Since the last Scrutiny Committee, obviously we've had to go to Council to explain why the cost of this project has escalated, and I'm grateful for Council for granting us the extra funds necessary to deliver the exciting project that we always wanted to deliver. I guess the news on this starts on page 91, which I think is the 3rd page of the report. So we have now appointed a contractor. I'm pleased to see they're working out of Grimsby, which I'm sure all of us would agree is a local company. And they also came with quite a long list of what we would call social value add-ons, which are itemised on the next page. We did release some press, and I think it's fair to acknowledge that did raise some heat out in the social media world. Perhaps the artist's impression that we put with the press release wasn't the best illustration of what this is going to look like eventually. And in response to that, we held a Ask the Architect drop-in event on Worden Park with some better graphics. And in fact, we had some real-life examples of the type of render that we'll be using so people could see what it would actually look like. I have to say that was a really positive event. Some people did come with some questions, and in the main left quite happy. So as I said, on page 92, you'll see that list of all those extras we're getting from the contractor in terms of social value. And I think they really, I hope the committee, will welcome them as much as I and my colleagues on Cabinet did. The existing tenants, the Folly Cafe, seem to be well established now in their temporary accommodation. It might be more interesting for them when winter comes, because it is a little bit open, but they are, I believe, investing in some thermals to help them through that. And obviously we have a really good relationship with the Folly Cafe tenants to the extent that they've just won the tender to operate the cafe in Hurst Grange. So they're people who we know and they know us, and I'm confident that we'll come to an accommodation for them to get them into the new building. So works are ongoing. The old conservatory's gone. There's some quite nice pictures actually in the report so that you can see the boiler house building has had to come down. The contractors weren't happy with the way it looked in terms of its structure. All the bricks have been saved, so they'll be reused, and work is cracking on. They found a basement that we didn't know was there, but archaeologists have been in there and taken some pictures and measurements, and that's now been infilled, ready for the work to do, but we know what's under there. And what I was really pleased to see, we're not just having the boring railings and hoardings around there. There's some really nice infographics being put up by our comms team, so I thank those people who came up with that. Some quite interesting information about the hall for people who didn't know. And as I say, you can see we're cracking on. I think the contractor is very much aware that our wish for this to be open in time for Leyland Festival in June next year. The one thing I'm particularly asking questions about now, and it is alluded to in the report, we've got the new Museums, Culture and Tourism team. I've had probably half a dozen informal inquiries about using the hall for events. Obviously, if you're thinking of a wedding, people are 12, 18 months ahead. So we need to firm that up, really. We need to get a designated email address and contact number so that if people are asking about booking events, we can get them into the system. That, to be honest, isn't there yet, although we are, as it says, we are recording enquiries. But I think for me, that's the next stage. Let's get the commercial team into a place where they can accept bookings, and then we can start seeing some money coming in, because we can't wait until the place is open to start accepting bookings. But other than that, it is all, all systems go at the moment. I think it was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we had in the past suggested a site visit. I think that's something I'm more than happy to explore with the contractors, health and safety notwithstanding, but I think members would enjoy going on site and seeing the work in progress. I don't know if I've missed anything. Mark, it's up to you to tell me where I've gone wrong.
Oh, it was very thorough.
Thank you. That concludes my remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Thomason. That's helpful, and we'd very much welcome the opportunity to have a site visit in the near future. If that can be arranged this side of Christmas, that would be great. Thank you. Instead of the first question coming from me, it's over to Councillor Unsworth, please.
Again, my question's been answered, I think, which is whether the project is still on track for opening for the Jubilee, Platinum Jubilee next year.
The contractors are very much aware of our wish for this. I think there will be, on any project like this, some things will take a bit longer than you think. But the time is, 8 months, 9 months. So they're quite aware. And as far as we're concerned, it's still on track.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walton.
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Tomlinson. How confident are you that the anticipated increase of the budget of 2.9 million will be sufficient to cover the cost of the project? Because on many occasions before, you've always said that any budget increases will not be presented to council, and the project would be delivered within the existing budget. So do you envisage any more increase in the budget?
I certainly hope not. We did build some contingency into this one though. So there is, we know what we're being quoted for, that's in the contract, and there is 250,000 of contingency that's already built in. Who knows, with a fair wind and a bit of luck, we might not need that £250,000, but that is in there to cover exactly the sort of things that you've alluded to. We live in strange times, don't we? National shortage of concrete because of HS2. I didn't know that. The overflow car parking at Werdon Park, those concrete bases, there's a shortage of them because they've all been used to build Brexit lorry parks, whether we'll really need them or not, but that's what's happened to them. So we do live in strange, unusual times. I'm hoping that £250,000, which is almost 10% of the project cost, will be enough to cover any contingencies.
How long do you envisage it will take?
Councillor Walton, could you put your microphone on?
Sorry. How long do you think it will take for the payback period due to the current increase in budget be?
But I don't think there was ever a payback period, or if there was, it was a very long time, because what we always said about Werdon Hall was it had to cover its own costs, and that still remains the ambition, that it has to cover its own running costs and not be a long-term drain on the council's finances. But the investment from the borough investment account, which was money just sat, that the council had in its bank account for a long time. We said fairly early on when we took over as administration, we wanted that money to invest in the borough rather than be sat there waiting to find a commercial opportunity. And that's what, that was a political decision that we took. We owned a Grade 2 listed building in a green flag park that we'd not spent any money on for 8 or 9 years and was deteriorating, and was, at some stage, somebody would have had to grasp the nettle here and decide to do something with Werdon Hall. And the longer you leave it, the more the costs go up. So, I think in terms of paying back the original, the now £2.9 million, I would suggest that's probably not going to happen in our political lifetimes, but we still have that ambition that on a year-to-year basis in terms of revenue, Word Hall will wash its own face, if you'll excuse the vernacular.
Okay, thank you.
That response does worry me somewhat.
I think it's a realistic statement of where we are. We don't want it to be a drain on the revenue budget. We do want this facility to pay its own way, but it being realistic, will it pay back £2.9 million into the council's capital budget in the times that any of us are likely to be on the council? The answer is probably no. I think what you also have to consider, if you look at this just as a financial proposition, then I think you're missing out on an awful lot. Because, as I say, we have got the stewardship of a Grade 2 listed building in a park that brings in hundreds of thousands of visitors to South Ribble every year. And those people who are coming into South Ribble have also got the opportunity to recognise what a great place it is to live, work and play, but also spend money while they're here as well. And that's, the social value that it's added. So I think I've been frank about that. It remains our ambition that its running costs are paid for by money it generates itself.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thurber.
Well, thank you, Chair. It's good to see the engagement and social value element embedded into the project. How has the council's climate change ambitions, I should think, been incorporated into the project?
It's really difficult with a Grade 2 listed building, really difficult, and we have to be honest about that. You can't put solar panels on. We investigated ground source heat pumps for this place. Again, just nowhere near financially justifiable, but the heating will be new, so it will certainly be much more efficient than it was, and the windows will all be refurbished. But the old conservatory that frankly leaked heat 9 months of the year and made people swelter for 3 months of the year will be gone and replaced by a new build. So that will help enormously. If I'm honest, I don't know what the national grading system letter would be for this building. But I mean, in terms of let's be honest, it's a Grade 2 listed building. It's not going to be carbon neutral. It just isn't. But what we have to do is make sure that other activities within the council can offset the carbon that this place will generate. But we just have to be honest, when you've got a Grade 2 listed building, that's not what you're going to achieve.
So you're looking at an offsetting programme rather than a carbon neutral programme for the building, basically?
I think we have ambitions for the council as a whole. We want the council to be carbon neutral, but that doesn't mean to say every single aspect of the council will be, carbon neutral. There will be some aspects of the council that will always generate a carbon footprint, and you have to find other parts of the council's activity to negate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Buttery, please.
Thank you, Chair. What steps are being taken to mitigate the risks around the supply of materials and uncovering additional works?
Thank you. I'm hoping that uncovering additional works is a risk we've already encountered and had to deal with. In terms of the supply chain, I think it's identified as a risk. Quite what the professionals are doing to mitigate that risk, I might have to ask Mark to suggest, but I mean, we all know, don't we, what the supply chains are like at the moment. Undoubtedly a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk for every construction project at the moment. I mean, it's alluded to in the report. All we can do is ensure the contractor He's ordering materials well in advance of when they're actually required for that phase of work. But it's a very, very difficult one to control. And it applies to every single construction project in the country, as was alluded to earlier, fortunately.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from members of the committee? Are there any questions from members of the council who are joining us remotely? It appears not. Okay, do we have some draft recommendations, Darren, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just thinking of a couple of the themes. The committee thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for their report and welcomes the progress being made with the Worden Hall project. The committee is grateful for the reassurance that the project is currently on track to open for the Platinum Jubilee Festival and is currently within budget. Thank you, Chair.
I think those recommendations are fine. If we could just firm up the date of the visit, I think that will be helpful, which has been offered, yeah. Are we happy to accept those, colleagues?
Yeah.
And thank Matthew and Mark for your time this evening. Wish you well with the project. Okay, colleagues, moving on to item 9. The urgent executive and council decisions. So this is here for us to review, and we may wish to comment on some of these decisions which have taken place. We've got a chief executive and the deputy leader who have joined us. Do you want to comment on these items? Yeah, okay, that's fine. If I can open up.
Sure, if I may.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully the commentary with the report explains the rationale. I know that the council as a whole wants to move away from urgent decisions, and we all want that. But I hope that the report explains that in some circumstances that's a real challenge for a variety of different reasons. And the report is self-explanatory, but I am happy to take any particular points or questions.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Councillor Walton, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I just have a problem with the amount of urgent and executive decisions, but the main problem for me was the Worden Hall refurbishment contract appointment. And it explains what the special urgency procedure was, but if the notice is not waived, it will put at risk the delivery of the scheme for the Leyland Festival in June 2022. So the Mayor agreed to waive the call-in. To me, I know we want the festival to take place in June 2022, but is this a relevant reason for it not even being able to come to have a call-in procedure to it, that the Mayor agreed to waive the call-in on this particular item?
Thank you, Chair. So I think the report explains that the rationale for that decision, and I can't speak for the Mayor, but that quite a bit of information had been presented. It was a delegated decision that was made. You're right, there was a decision to essentially waive the call-in. I think the report explains the rationale in that a lot of information being provided. It was just we've been through the tender process, and the contractor that won the tender was appointed. It was as simple as that.
Okay. Thank you. I've read the comments. I mean, there will always be a need for urgent decisions. We're all aware of that, and there's a right and a proper way of it being done. I've got to say, I don't buy the justification on this occasion. I don't think it was justified. I am deeply concerned that the scrutiny call-in was waived, and personally, I think that sets a dangerous precedent moving forward, and I wouldn't like us to see that happening again. it is a real concern, and it's one that we need to avoid in the future. Any other colleagues want to comment on that? Councillor Thirlborn.
I've got one major question. One was about word and all, and the minor one to mirror that. We have two decisions, and I understand for the decarbonisation one, there was a time limit attached to it, where we had a certain amount of time to get the decarbonisation plan, and some stickler, like i.e. myself, is mentioned in there, and those questions were answered. What we can't see is why, in the Word and Hall refurbishment project, why this was done. And my question really to you, yourself, and the Cabinet and the leadership of the Council, is there any risk to us by this urgent decision being made? Is there any risk to the Council?
Oh, in terms of the Word and Hall? Yeah. So, no, it is a legitimate process that's being followed. The Mayor has ultimate control over that. I don't think there's any risk. The risk, as Councillor Green has pointed out, is that Scrutiny do not have the opportunity to scrutinise that decision. And I think it's fair to say his comments are noted.
Any other questions from colleagues? Councillor Sharples.
Yeah, just a comment really. It's a bit of a tricky one, the Word and Hall one, and I take other members' views, but it was debated at council, as I recall. Everybody knew what the situation was. I really don't think there's an issue with this one personally. It's just my personal view. I recall it coming to council. I remember it being debated, and I think that should have been enough. I really do.
Well, I would just make the comment is that, I mean, I know it's said about setting a precedent with the Mayor, but I think that has been done before, and so I don't think it is a precedent. I think there has been discussions there, and I think the explanation is that there was a real urgency on it. I would agree with you and the committee that it should be a last resort. It shouldn't be something that is used often, and it should be open for explanation. But it is ultimately the Mayor's decision. And if I was sitting in your seat, I mean, I would probably express the same reservations, because Scrutiny should have the right to call it in, but there will be exceptional circumstances, and I know that it has happened previously on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Tiffington. No, I think it's something that collectively all of us, so all 50 councillors, we don't know when this will happen again. It might be in the next 18 months of this current administration. It might be in the terms of the next administration, who knows? But I don't think it's the way that we should be looking to proceed as a borough council.
Noted.
Are there any questions from colleagues tuning in remotely, please? Everyone's gone quiet. Maybe. Okay, thank you. Are there any draft recommendations, Darren?
The committee asks that
Mr. Cranshaw is going to be very diplomatic here.
Lots of words. The committee expresses concern at the use of the waiving of call-in and asks that the executive use this sparingly in the future.
Are there any comments on that draft recommendation? I would ask that we added the word significant before concern, please. But I think it has been noted, in fairness. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we're happy to accept that?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary and Meg. sorry, I've not got the microphone on now. So item 10, scrutiny matters. First of all, the Health Scrutiny Committee at Lancashire County Council, Councillor Howarth attends this. As he's not present with us, although he is joining remotely this evening, we have had a note which has been circulated. Are there any questions from members on that note? Okay. Any questions from any other councillors? No. Okay, the next item is the update on the scrutiny review of health inequalities. In terms of where the task group is up to, is there any update this evening?
I can provide an update that we are working with the offices to write the report at this stage. It's getting everybody together to come to have a proper workshop to bring all the ideas together. So as soon as we get a date for that, we will have the report ready.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. And wearing my other hat as Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing at LCC, I look forward to that report because I think there'll be some interesting learning in that. Thank you.
Can I ask for the
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next item, any meetings or training that's been attended by scrutiny members? Does any colleagues want to update us on anything that they've been to? No, okay, thank you. Next item is the Cabinet Forward Plan. Do we have any comments to make upon that? No, okay, and the next item is the Scrutiny Committee Forward Plan and Review Programme, which is set out before us. We have a special meeting of the Scrutiny Committee which is scheduled for November or December to focus on housing associations, which was requested sometime, and obviously we delayed that due to COVID. It would be great if we can get as many people there as present in terms of housing associations, but also in terms of members of the public. So I assume that the officers are already working with Councillor Howarth regarding some press coverage in terms of that meeting moving forward, which I think would be helpful. Are there any further comments on this Scrutiny Forward Plan? We do have the opportunity to scrutinise a couple of topics in some detail this year and to establish some working groups regarding those. Are there any particular items that members would like us to focus on? Councillor Thurborn.
An asset review. We did try and start this before COVID. I think we had one meeting, then COVID hit. I just wondered if we can pick that back up. I know that it's Councillor Howarth, the chair, something that we've actually asked for before, and we've not seen a report. I think that would be a good working group to start up again.
Okay, that's fine. A member supportive of that suggestion? Thank you. Yes, Gary.
Just start with this. So, the possibly is just an issue of timing there, because part of the asset review was a number of pieces of work we had to do in terms of the assets themselves, which required us to visit all those assets. Obviously, due to COVID, that's been quite difficult. So all I would ask is that we just get an update on progress, and then determine whether actually that's possible again in this during this programme.
Okay, thank you. Happy to accept that, Steve?
I'm happy to accept that.
Okay. That's fine, thank you. The other one I do feel that we need to look at it is our response to COVID and how we've worked with partners during what's been a difficult 18 months. But there will always be lessons learned, but I think we've also got some really good examples of how we have worked effectively. I think we need to look at that in some detail. So I'd like us to establish a task group to look at that. Don't think we need to deal with the membership of that this evening, but if we can just ask the respective groups to appoint their members in due course. That's okay, agreeable to colleagues? Thank you. Anything else that anyone else wishes to raise? Okay, anything that members not on the scrutiny committee wish to raise? That's fine. Thank you. Which brings us almost to the end of the meeting. As I say, there is a special meeting which is scheduled to take place. The next ordinary meeting is scheduled to take place on Tuesday, the 11th of January. I have queried with officers this evening as to whether that's an appropriate date for that meeting. The reason why I raise that is because in order for that to take place, the agenda and all the papers would have to be prepared in December ahead of Christmas in order to comply with deadlines. And I was just wondering whether it could be pushed forward to the next week, which might make it easier for officers, first of all. And secondly, we'll make sure that the information which is coming to the Scrutiny Committee will be more up to date rather than it going out a month beforehand. But I feel I'll leave that to Darren and Charlotte to look at that moving forwards. Apart from that, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this evening, either in person or remotely. I think it's been a really interesting meeting. Thanks for your support. I've been a long-term member of Scrutiny, on and off over my time as a councillor. But it's the first time I've actually chaired a Scrutiny Committee meeting. So thank you to the officers for excellent support, and thank you to the members. Thank you, Mick, for staying for the duration. Thank you, Gary. We've been talking about health and wellbeing. I think you've done a few extra steps coming back and forth to the committee meeting this evening. But thank you. Have a safe journey home, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,